Okay, guys, welcome to a brand new workshop. This time I'm accompanied by Hamad. So he will introduce himself shortly and also talk about the topic we are going to cover inside of this workshop itself. So over to you, Hamad.
Hey guys, my name is Ahmad. I am with UChat support staff and I specialize in making mini apps. And today we are going to go over the basics of making how to make a mini app, how to set up an action, and how to use it. Over to you, Mark.
Perfect, perfect. So inside of this workshop, we are trying to cover all the aspects of the mini app version 2, because that's a more easier way to manage mini apps, how to create mini apps. It's pretty much similar towards how you build chatbots using a visual flow builder, like menu as well. So without further ado, Ahmad, take over, share your screen, and then we can get into the specifics.
Okay, sure. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. So on the dashboard of your workspace, first go to the My Contents, and then from there you need to open up the My Mini Apps. Here, let's click on the Create New App, and then click on the Mini App version 2 because that's we are going to build, and just write any name. For now, it's just leave it as sample, and then create it. Once it's created, click on Edit, and it will take us inside it. Okay, once we are inside, you will see that.
Once it loads.
Yep, it loads. All right. So once you are inside, you're going to be inside the main flow of the mini app, just like how you are in the main flow of any subflow. You need to click on the flows, and here you can see all the flows which are going to be present in your mini app, and all the flows just like a subflow, just like a normal bot will have. So you can assume that a mini app is like just like a mini version of a bot. Now from there onwards, let's look at the left side menu. So at the left side, we have all the features, all the things that are required to build a mini app. So let's go over it one by one. Flow Builder actually shows us the actual flow canvas where you can click on the flows, everything up and there. On the flows, we can see all the flows. If I click on new subflow inside mini app, we have the basic three subtypes of subflows. Mini app is basically a simple subflow. Workflow is the workflow that you already have in uh, normal UChat bot, and function flow of is the same one as you have in the UChat. But now I'm just going to create a subflow called let's do it action one or something like that. Let's just click on create, and it creates itself. Now click on publish, and that's it. So we have the flow created. Now let's hop over to the menu again and see what else we have. If I click on the app fields, here, here just like in a normal bot, you have the content tab. In the mini app, we have the app fields. And inside the app fields, we are going to add all the variables, all the user fields we are going to be needing. We are going to use inside our mini app. Here you are going to create everything up. So how we can do that? Just click on the app field plus, and here you can, let's say, first name, and over the types you have several types. The text is a simple string value, the number is an integer, the boolean can be true or false, you have the basic date, you have the basic date time, and then you have the basic JSON. So everything, whatever you use, all the types you use inside a normal bot, inside UChat, you can use it here in the mini app as well. Let's just leave it here. You can set up a default value, but I'll just leave it empty. If you want to move this to a particular folder, you can do that as well. And I'm just gonna click on save. All right, now if we come back to the menu again, we have Auth. Now this Auth tab is one of the most important aspects of building a mini app. In this tab, you can set up your bot fields, or in this mini app case, we call them global variables. You can set up the API keys or an OAuth if your app requires it, and you can have subscription request that subscribes users to your mini app. The basics here would be if you want to have anything globally applied on your mini app, you can have a variable. Let's say I want, let's say my for a unique name, let's name it as first name and leave it as type string. And you can set it up as a required or unrequired. For now, I'm just going to leave it as required and first name, and then I can save it in one of the app fields that I would like to create. For the purpose of this sample mini app, we are going to use this input for the for storing the API key. So let's create an API key. Go back, go back to the app fields, create an app, API key, and then save it, and then click on auth, click on inputs, click on add item, and then here I'm going to get API, gonna make it a required, and then API key, and then I'm going to save this and map this to the API key variable that we created, and then we're going to click on save. Once that is done, I'm just going to click on save, and our auth is ready. Now by default, you can see that it is reverted to API key. We can change it from API key to OAuth by clicking on this. But the setup for OAuth would be a bit too would be out of scope for the for the scope of this video. We're just going to stick to the API key. Now everything is set up. Let's go to the Actions tab. Now Actions is the most important aspect of a mini app. This Action tab basically acts as an interface between your bot and your mini app. So all the inputs and all the outputs that any action inside your mini app will come from this particular action. So we will revisit this later in a bit when we are going to make some actions, and we will then delve into deeper that way. Let's go back here. Triggers. Triggers are just like the triggers you have on your bot. You can set up different conditions for to happen inside your mini app. For example, let's say a webhook or a certain condition going off, and triggers the which triggers an action inside mini app, and you can receive the result of the trigger from the automations tab or the triggers tab inside your bot. One-time URLs basically work as web forms. Since in mini app we do not have inbound webhooks, so we can use one-time URLs, sometimes as web forms, sometimes as inbound webhooks to receive or collect any data coming from APIs that support dynamic webhook setting. The
Yeah, and we
sources
and
is
just sorry to interrupt. We also have a dedicated video on this already on the on our channel. So I will also put a
yeah, that's
link inside the video description, so you can also watch that as well.
mhm. So sources. So sometimes what you need is you need to give your users a choice to select different values from either a drop down, which either comes from a dynamic source or a static source. The source tab includes all the sources that you can get the variable from. So for example, if I click on new source and I let's say name it as service or something, right? And then leave you can have it as static, have it as dynamic. Now for dynamic, this would be out of scope of this value, so just leave it with the static one. And we can have a title called services. And when you click on edit, we can add different items. So service one would be, let's say let's say car wash, and the value would be, let's say car wash, or you can have the value one, and then for that would be oil change, and the value could be 2. And depending on whatever the user chooses between these variables, you can map the value and then have conditions where you can do certain actions differently. For now, just leave it as that. I'm just going to delete this one. We are going not going to need it for this video. And for the settings here, you can set up the name, set up the logo, the description, the cover image. If you have any YouTube video or tutorial associated with the mini app, you can do it here. And this is basically the whole contains all the information regarding your mini app.
Yeah.
So, or if you need any API scopes, if you need any if you have any documentation on it, you can share everything up here. And that's it for the menu. Now let's come back to the flows and create an actual action. Now I'm going to create a new subflow, and the actions we are going to use for this video is going to be the UChat API, and we are going to use the flow tags, and we're just basically going to go through some of the actions here. Now I'm going to create an action called uh, get 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 tags. And what this action will do is it will get us all the tags that we have available in a certain bot. Now, the next step would be to have an external request, just like you would have in a simple bot. And then you can, so one thing that I would like to explain a bit more here, let me just zoom down a bit. So in the mini app, you do not have all the actions that you would have in a simple bot. You will only have very dedicated options uh, because it's a mini app. And you can have an external request, you can have a JavaScript function, you can have a set variable value, you can have a clear variable value, you can have a JSON operation. OpenAI is something that we just have started supporting. So you can actually use AI inside your mini app that can actually help you um, format something, build something, answer something, etc. You can have a fire trigger, which basically fires a trigger if you have any. You can get a one-time URL, which activates the one-time URLs. We have a dedicated video for it. You can refer it to that. And then we can have set action failed. Now, what the set action failed does is that in case maybe a user enters the wrong data, or maybe the API endpoint isn't working correctly, you can have it such that this will once this is set up, or you can set this up to have an error appear in the error logs of the bot on which the mini app is installed. For example, let's say my request fails due to some reason, and the error is the API key is wrong or the API key is invalid. I can use this. I can use this action here called set action fail to map it to the error so that the user would know that they have entered an invalid API key. Now let's just create an action. I'm just gonna click on the external request here, and then click on the add your request, and then here we have the basic structure of we have the basic external request. Coming back to the API, we are going to use this action, and you can see it's a get request. So let's go back, set it up as get. We need a base URL. I already have the base URL here. But you can also copy it by going here and copying it from here. Coming back, setting this up here, and this is followed by flow tags. Just make sure that you don't have anything extra,
Yeah.
and once that is done, the next thing you need to do after setting the API URL is the authorization. Now, in this case, UChat suppose have a bearer token for each bot. You can create it by going to the user settings and creating a bot token for uh, each bot. It is generated at bot level. I already have one in advance, which I'm going to use, which is called this one. I'm just going to copy it. And now come back, go to the authorization tab. For this purpose, you shall suppose the bearer token, but there will be platforms, different website, different platform, different services that do use a basic U or basic auth as well as a digest token as well. But for the most part, a lot of the services just use the bearer token. You will find what type of the authorization the any service uses on their API docs page. For now, we're just going with the bearer token. Now here you can see that you can map a variable here and have a test value here. We are going to use, for the token, we already have an API key variable, which we are going to use here. And for the test, I'm just going to copy everything which I copied from the API. Here we go. Now everything is set. We do not need any body for this action. There's no body. We can do set some parameters. So let's say limit and limit the resources. So You do see that this is on parameters. If you come back, go to URL parameters, set it up as the limit, and let's keep the value to 10. You can make this dynamic as well, but for now, I'm just going to go with 10. And I'm click on. All right. So you can have different response code depend upon the service. In 90% of the time, response 200 means the endpoint or the external request has been successfully executed, and the data you get back is this. Now I'm just going to map this JSON. So let's map it to get tags JSON, and then select a JSON here, and then click on add, and then you have your basic action, click on save. All right, so now we have an action, but in order for this action to be actually activated, we need to make it live from inside the actions tab. Once we get inside the actions tab, we can click on new action, and now we need to name it. So let's name it get tags. The title will be get all tags, as it just brings up all the tags, and click on save. From choose subflow, you're going to choose the subflow, or the subflow for this is the get tags. Now click on the edit, and inside here, you're going to set up your inputs and your outputs. The inputs will be all the variables that you need, that you need as inputs inside your external request, and the outputs will be the result generated by the API or the external request. The type would be what type of action it is, although it's optional to set this up, but it is recommended because when you have a mini app with a lot of actions, setting up with different types is great. Since this is just a read action, I'm just going to keep it as read. Now you can add some description here saying what it actually does. So I'm just going to write this action brings all the tags inside the bot. That's it. And if I come back to the API page, you can see the inputs that you can use, although all of these are optional. So for now, we don't need any inputs. For output, we are saving it in a JSON file. So I'm just going to name it as get tags, get tags JSON. And then here I'm going to select the get tags JSON and click on save, and click on save again. So now my action is actually live. If I install this mini app in a bot, I can actually see this action. Mark, do you want me to go and install this in a bot and then use the action from there, or we can proceed with another action?
I think before we are going to do that, let's also try to add some error handling as well, right? So if you can explain that process, because that will be a really important part of building a mini app as well. So if people can understand that in a really easy to set out way, then that would be a really good one.
Okay, sure. So if I click on this and I come to my external request, I I need to simulate an error. So let's remove this and click on test. So now I have a response code of 401, and this is basically an error. Now, what I need to map the error first. Whatever response that we get, we need to map it first in order to display it and handle it properly. The best thing you can do, or the most recommended way of handling this, is if you are not if you are not sure about which variable to map for the error, you can just map the whole JSON and then map it as error. And I will show you how to handle this in a moment. So let's just save it as error. And you can see the response code here is 401. In a lot of cases, all the errors, all the response codes generated when an external request is invalid is either starts with 4 or 400s or 5 or 500s. In this case, for UChat, we have all the response code that comes in as errors as 400s. We are just going to go it with that. Click on save. Now, here inside here, you can see we have an option of add root. If you click on this, you can actually set the response code of what we get. In this case, we are going to get a 401, but you need to have the error in such a way that you can have it for all the response code that results in an error. So I'm just going to just going to have it as 4. And what this does is any response code that starts with a 4 is going to route it through this. I'm going to click on save. Now you can see you can actually connect this thing to something else. If I click on this, I'll get the action. And if I click on the action, now I can use this set action failed action here. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to map um, the error JSON field that we had. Yep, everything, the complete JSON, and click on save. In this way, you can have different response code do different things within the mini app. I think that's a really cool feature to have. And this is how you basically have a mini app handle errors. If after you have this action done, the if your mini app action fails or it results in a failure, this error, whatever error it shows, is going to appear in the error logs of your bot, and that's how you handle the errors inside a mini app. All right. So what should we do next, Mark? Make another action
Um,
or install the bot?
well, maybe we can also add a trigger. So for example, if an error is being generated, right? Maybe we can also add that as a trigger to, for example, notify an admin.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So for error, what we can do is let's have a trigger. So we're going to click on a new trigger, and let's say error occurred, and then here will be error occurred, and click on save, click on edit, click on save for now. We don't need any contacts, and we are going to go back to the flow. Come back to the flow. Okay, we have this right. We can click on this. We can remove this. And here we are going to have an action called fire trigger. And the trigger is going to fire as error occurred. And if you come back to the triggers, whatever output you need from this trigger, you can set it up as here. So for now, I just need the error, have it as error, and the arrow JSON. So what this trigger will do is, if something wrong happens inside my mini app, what this trigger will do is it will s- uh, it will send the output of the error as a trigger, and then I can map it anywhere. And that's how you set up a trigger.
Perfect, perfect. I think we can put this action into use. So let's install this mini app as a draft, and then we can
Mhm.
show it as an action inside the flow as well.
All right. So for this, you need to come out from the mini app. So just click on the workspace name, and you will be on the dashboard. And then from there, go to the contents, and you can find your mini app here. Click on publish, and then you have this thing called share the draft version. Just click here, and it will copy the link, and just click on cancel, and then from here install it. Yep, everything's good. Here is going to install it. It's going to ask me for the API key, of course. I'm going to go back, copy this up, come back, have everything here, click on save, and here it is. Now let's go back to an omnichannel bot and use this menu. Just do note that all the mini apps are installed at workspace level. So once a mini app is installed, you can use it in any bot you want. All right, let's create a folder here called mini app testing. Then a subflow called mini app testing subflow. Save. Click on the action node. Go to the integration section, scroll down to the very bottom, and you're gonna see the mini app that is currently in the draft. Click on edit action, and you will be able to select whatever action that you need here. We just have one action. We're just going to use that one. Now here is, if I had any input or an input field, it's going to ask me for the input, but since we do not have any inputs, we only have one output field, it's going to get an output field here. And I'm going to map it to a JSON called test.json, and then I'm going to save it. Notice that you get two options if a request fails, or uh, if you have this mapped. Let's say we map it. For the error handling, I'm just going to map this whatever JSON I get here to the test.json. Just going to map the whole thing here, and then I'm going to write error action failed. Save it here, and I'm just going to copy this node again. Like this to continue. And then just remove everything else from here because we just need the output. And that's it. Let's test the section. Click on preview pop-up, and you can see all the tags appearing here correctly.
Nice, nice.
If I Mhm. If I were to simulate an error, I can do that by going to the workspace and then entering the wrong API key. Let's go and do that so we can show how the errors actually show inside the error logs. So for that, you need to go to the integrations, sorry, to the mini app, and search for the mini app here. So now I have this sample here. Go to settings, and here you can actually see the API key. Just make it wrong. So I'm just going to delete one action. Once this is done, go back and refresh it. We are refreshing it so that it clears out any cache value that is being stored here. Otherwise, sometimes what happens is it's just going to load the previous value and it doesn't clear it up. So it's always good once you make an update to the action, just refresh your browser. Okay, now we are going to just preview it again. Click on preview pop-up, and let's wait. Okay, so now my action failed, but since the value is there, Actually, just remove the value. And then let's give it one more try. Okay, you can see that I have an error called error action failed. Now, if I close this window and go back to the tools and go to the error logs, you can see what the action was, and the action was response code 401. And that's how you basically handle and simulate an error. Okay, anything else, Mark, that we need to go over?
Yeah, so we also set up a trigger, right? So maybe it's also useful to show how we can use that inside the chatbot.
Yeah, sure. So let's build come back to the mini app testing and make a new subflow. This would be trigger from mini app. And basically what it does is it displays that there was a trigger that was activated. And if I go to the automations, go to the triggers, click a new trigger, and go to the very bottom, very bottom. I'm going to see the mini app here. Okay, error occurred. Now here I can map the field. So that would be attach this on as well. Or let's do something else. Let's do data. And then click on enabled and click on save. I still need to set up the trigger or the flow that will trigger the subflow. So I named it as trigger mania. Now what will happen is I can remove this error handling at the flow level. So what will happen is in this case is if an error occurs inside the mini app, it will trigger the subflow. Now you can set it up as such that the subflow can do anything. Maybe it can notify the admin. Maybe it can uh, notify the user in some way. For now, we are just outputting the value of the error. So we just need to see. So it's just going to trigger the error value. If I come back to the flow that we need, since I saved whatever information coming in the data JSON, I can actually use it to display it to the user. And then I'm going to come back. The write action is done. And then let's preview it.
There we go.
So you can see the first was the action was completed, and then the trigger event instantly happened. Where since we had it set up that way that any error if occurs, the trigger gets triggered, and the trigger was triggered, and then the message we got was unauthenticated. And that's how you can actually use triggers from inside Miniac to help you. You can use them in multiple ways. For this use case, we kept it simple. And yeah, that's about it. And that's how you can use the triggers.
Yeah, yeah. So I think if we go back towards the mini apps itself, right?
Mhm.
To show a little bit more about possible use cases that you can do inside the flow section itself, right? Because now we did a really simple external request, but we can provide some more actions inside of the flows themselves, and just give some context of what the possibilities are. We're not going to build them all out for you, but we want to clarify a few actions that are inside the flow section of the mini apps and what they might possibly do in order to help you set up more and more advanced automations through the mini app section. So I think, for example, a good way, Ahmad, is also to display how you, for example, could use when you get information back from the external request. For example, what the options could be if you get if you want to map more custom fields or more options through a connected JavaScript, for example, or if you want to format the data directly inside the mini app itself, right?
Yeah, so from here, you can continue the sequence of the flow, and then you can add another or chain another JavaScript function. And what this JavaScript action will do, it's going to import the JSON. So in this case, we were getting the get tags JSON, this whole thing. Let's copy this up as well so we can use it here. Let's have it here. And what basically you can do is you can uh change the format of this JSON if you need it in a very particular format, or you can use the JavaScript to filter and look for particular values. So for example, I just need the flow, I just need the tag ns. You can do the search using the tag ns, you can do the search using the name, but you can use multiple things inside the JavaScript just like you will do in a simple bot and manipulate the data that is coming from inside the external request output, and then you can map this to the JavaScript files. For example, I map. Let me create another one called specific tag, and I map the name of a very specific tag that I'm looking for here, and then I click on save. Now the output will increase. So all the all the variables that have been generated, their values are filled by the end block or the end node of the action. All those can be outputted out from an action. So for example, if this is the last node and all the variables before it that have been created, i can i can I can use those inside an action, and I can actually get an output from them. But if a variable is not generated yet or is not filled yet, and I want to have an output before, I cannot get the output because that variable is either not created or is not generated yet. So you can use multiple things. You can use JavaScript, or you can use, there are simple things as well. You can use condition nodes. Now, let's say you get a value of a true. I can add a condition here, and I can, let's say the specific tag value is, let's say it contains the word tag. And if it contains a tag, if it contains a tag, then only output the tag part. And if it doesn't contain the tag, you can actually fail the action or something along that way, where you can now have different routers within the action depending upon what output you are getting from the external value itself. One more thing here is you can actually use the OpenAI. So if I go back to the actions and click on OpenAI and click on action, let's go with chat completion. Now do know that if you want to use this action, the the workspace on which this mini app is installed should be integrated with OpenAI. Otherwise, this action will fail because it will not get the required API key from the workspace. So you do need that. And you can simply use this as the chat completion action and format the value, get the required data, analyze the data, produce a result, all the things that you can do on a map. You can actually do it inside the mini app and just output the result. This can actually simplify your flows a lot. As far as the error handling and the data and the errors that go inside the mini app. Mini apps do follow the 30-step rule, where if a user interaction does not happen for 30 seconds, the action fails. The mini app also follows the external request timeout rule, where if an external request, if the server do not get the data back in 15 to 20 seconds, the mini app action will fail. You do get all those timeout errors, all those errors that you usually do on the bot, also inside the mini app, because the mini app in its in its original form is just a subflow that we are just simplifying it. So when you are handling all the datas, all the executions, do keep in mind that all the errors that you can have in the bot will also be can also happen inside the subflow of a mini app.
Yeah.
Any other use case, Mark, you want me to go?
No, I think this gives a pretty good idea of what a mini app is able to do. I think for me personally, the big advantage of a mini app is that you can provide native integrations because they show up as native integrations inside UChat, or if you're building this on your partner plan, right, it provides more native integrations like such. Without the users needing to know any coding or to do any API calls themselves, but just to fill in the labels, the inputs, and only to map the outputs, right? Because they only need to give inputs for certain values and then only map the outputs. So the the probability that they are going to mess something up inside the API calls or any other logistics inside the mini app itself, right, is much less, and also provides a better user experience. At least in my opinion, I built maybe hundreds of templates, and the amount of support that I needed to do on each one, right, is really high. Just because people like to try and mess around with them. Maybe they mess up certain values, or they just delete something and try to add it back in, and then do 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 fill because of it. So yeah, I really think that the mini app is a really efficient way of providing an additional integration that UChat does not have natively. And once installing the mini app, it provides it in a native way, right? Because it shows under the integration section, and users can just use it, like, for example, all the native integrations as well. So I think this, sorry, this way of building additional on top of UChat or on top of your partner plan, if you are a partner, really provides additional value for your own clients in this regard. Any final thoughts on your end, Hamad?
I think it's good. I think the users can try and turn around and see what happens and how what mini apps they can build with. Do share it with us as well in the
Yeah,
group.
yeah, for sure. Uh, I think the only thing that you will need for mini app creation is a little bit of basic API knowledge. I think that is more than sufficient to build your first mini app, right? Um, Learning JavaScript, learning the more advanced sections like the one-time URLs and stuff like that, static sources, dynamic sources, is something that you can build upon when you cover the basics. And the mere basics will be to have a basic API understanding, so how external requests work, right? But version 2 of the mini app is much more advanced in terms that you can also provide conditions in opposed to version 1, which is really more API based and more JSON based in creating your mini apps. And this provides you a more visual way, and I think that will be a really uh, advantage for most builders out there, not only for the beginners, but I'm thinking also for the more advanced one as well. Now looking back at Hamad, I think if you need to choose between the two versions of the mini app, which one do you prefer personally, and why?
Oh, definitely version 2, because it just makes everything a lot easier. Also, the version 2 is a lot more closer to how you would build a bot anyway. So a lot
Yeah.
of people have experience building the bot can actually feel themselves a lot at home when building a mini app in version 2. Version 1 do not have the drag and drop builder. It doesn't have that. It requires deep understanding of the JSON and the actions and the requests. So it's just better to do it in the version 2.
Yeah, totally, totally. So in future future workshops for mini apps, we might cover more advanced sections like one-time URLs, maybe also the authentication section for OAuth 2, just to cover those basics as well. But we wanted to record a more fresh version of this mini app version 2 overview, just because the previous one was a little bit older. It was covering a larger range of actions. But I think this one is a little bit more fresh, provides you a little bit more step-by-step based overview. And if you have any questions, do let us know, and we will try to answer them as soon as possible. For now, if you like this workshop, do consider dropping a like because it will help us discover if you want more of such future workshops, if we need to dedicate more time into them. And if you did not subscribe to the channel, please do so because you will be notified of all new future videos and updates that we bring towards the UChat platform. For now, we want to wish you a very great day. Take care, and we'll talk to you really, really soon.